Okay, testing 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to the project, guys. This is a continuation of, I believe it's a Friday. That's a slice of life, another maybe 15-20 minute slice of life episode. And what we're going to talk about for today is work. And I find this actually kind of interesting because this is, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I actually really like what I do for my job. I'm not saying, well, to be honest, to be fair, most of my life I've always enjoyed working, depending on the choice of work and the environment, the colleagues, the atmosphere, the tasks and duties, right? If you make the right decisions, and I tend to do, I make a fairly comprehensive decision based on my goals, the environment, the colleagues, and everything like that. Just general comprehensive career prospects, but also even temporary jobs like that, internships and whatever, even volunteering gigs. I'm generally careful about what sort of goals I have in mind. And so I worked in a variety of different niches, whether it's from like restaurants, hospitality, to administration and clerical work, to warehousing, operations, you name it, to skilled trades, all the way to healthcare. It's just been a lot of different, met a lot of people, a lot of different communities, done a lot of different tasks, experienced a lot of different atmospheres and cultures. And I think that's just good. That's something, you want to live your life, right? So what I've settled with recently, and this is a job I think, if I can, I'd like to do this for the rest of my life, at least in part, because it's only a part-time job and it's intended to be that way. So what you see on the top, my left is your right, is a page, and again, privacy, confidentiality. I want to say for this episode and the next episode, there's going to be a lot of stuff I just can't show you. So right off the bat right now, this is probably the first and only page that I'll be able to show you a significant amount of information about. So it's just an article, and that's fine. But for the going forward, most of the stuff that we'll be talking and discussing about, I can't really show almost anything at all. And that's because it's not that I can't, but I'm going to make the assumption fair legal liability and general confidentiality and classified documentation assumption. I'm just going to assume that these are all, I'm going to act as if all of these, if they weren't already, I'm going to act as if they are internal business documents. And so there will be, we're not going to show anything, and secondly, we're also not going to talk specifically about anything. And I think that's going to be roughly 80 to 90% of the content. We won't be talking about in itself, but just around the general nature or topics around it. So for example, instead of discussing the specific document, I might talk about the general broad topics that are, or the industry that is affiliated with the content within that document, right? I won't talk about anything within the document itself. This is the only page that will be able to do that. And so I'm working for retail. Long story short, it's a large retailer. And so, well, if you know, you know, but I'm not going to mention too much here. So here is one article to start this episode off with, this multimedia project episode. So the first one among a few is an article. We're going to start off very broad. This is shows up on my dashboard, and we'll get to that in a moment, which again, you won't be able to see anything at all, and I'm not going to detail any real details. So real talk, tariffs, this is the one thing that I can discuss with some openness because it's public information anyways. So our CEO and whatever has say whatever because he doesn't have the best reputation in my general city. International trade between blah and blah states is getting tense these days. If you haven't been following along, I'm just reading to you the first paragraph. In recent weeks, the US has started to impose tariffs on blah products. These are essentially a tax, which would mean that whenever a US-based company imports a product from blah, they would need to pay an additional 25% for that item. So in response to these threats, blah has announced its own set of tariffs on US goods. This was generally looked at as the start of a trade war, which likely will just make everything more expensive for companies and consumers in both countries, including food. Fortunately, the two governments have reached an agreement to put a temporary 30-day pause on these tariffs. So I'm not gonna go further beyond this. Well, maybe a little bit. Let's go down here, right? We're securing as much food as possible that is grown and prepared in blah. We're talking with the current local vendors to get more products from them, and that's the first point. Second, third point, we're showcasing more products prepared in our domestic country, in our stores, right? Anyways, long story short, this article is about the trade war, which isn't really, it's not really, I'm gonna be honest, when they say trade war, I just kind of laugh, I scoff a little bit because like, trade war? Man, I know our countries are not exactly small, but let's keep it a buck. US is a giant on the global stage. Our country, I don't think so. I don't think it's like a giant, right? I think it's like, yeah, G7, G20, but let's not get it twisted, you know. Our country isn't exactly like Russia or US or China. It's not that. It's not the top, you know, big three, including India or whatever. Anyways, the point is, yeah, I guess they can call it a trade war, whatever. You don't have to be a large country just to have it be considered a trade war. The point is, there was an article here released for all the employees and staff, and honestly, nothing in this article is exclusive to us as colleagues and staff. This is all information that is broadcast on our local CP24 news, CTV news channel, city news channels. It is just general knowledge at this point that basically we're going companies across the board from various industries, from grocery to retail to healthcare to manufacturing and blah-de-da, are going to start trying to sell domestic imports from their own country, right? It's just like, duh, no shit. So there's nothing new here. But now going forward, so I'm going to close this article now. Going forward, throughout the rest of this episode, I am going to, again, for privacy, confidentiality, and under the general assumption of classified documents and classified topics, I'm not going to showcase or talk directly about anything here further. Just want to let that clear in terms of legal liability and so on and so forth. We're not going to risk a single thing. So I'm just expanding here. If you can't tell, the privacy graphic, you won't be able to see very much. I apologize, but it has to be that way. So just let me pause and move on to the next tab. Well, my bad. Maybe not quite. You can see a little bit, but only for this one. After going forward, after this one, you really won't be able to see very much at all. So what's next here is we have the dashboard, right, where I can click on the article, and there are usually, it's like a news board of updates, right, like a newsletter on one side, and on the right hand side there are apps for the staff. So for example, you could click on an app. We use a certain specific app, again, no names mentioned, everything's totally, I'm going to assume, classified. Here's an app that allows you to check your schedule. There's another app that allows you to check your pay stubs, another app that allows you to check, like, you know, to actually enroll into courses, you know, and stuff like that. One for, you know, customer service or staff, employee service, and then so on and so forth, right? So that's the dashboard. You know, when you enter your password and everything, and username, and you log into your employee account, and then you get presented to a learning management system, which I believe most companies nowadays will have. So all the onboarding materials, after you're done, you get access to, general employee stuff. So that's it. I'm not going to showcase anything more. I'm not going to talk about anything more here. All you need to know is that it is a dashboard, and I'm going to pull it down now and let's see what the next tab are. I do keep the dashboard tab open at all times, not necessarily logged in. I usually log out actually, just for security purposes, right? I don't want to compromise anything, but I keep that tab open because I log in on pretty much every other day. So to check my schedule and stuff like that. So moving on. Turns out I can actually showcase another one actually. I'm not a little bit surprised. I don't really actually know what's gonna pop up next, so this is, that's why I always pause the episode, just so I have to make sure. So this one's safe as well. So once I log in, aside from getting the dashboard with the news and stuff and the apps, I can also click somewhere to search all the internal documents and business related materials. So all stories, pages, story resources, work resources, policies, and so on and so forth. And so you can see here, this is going to be relevant for the next full episode and the next one as well. So yearly profit fiscal store comparison, that's what I put in the keywords for. And that's because a little backstory here, and I'm going to cover that up now. You can't see anything here, but I know the next tab is going forward, the rest of this episode is going to cover a whole bunch of stuff that I just won't talk much about in any detail. I won't talk in any detail actually about them, nor will I show anything. So the reason behind this is because I was working yesterday, and I got in a conversation with our store manager and ASM, so assistant manager. And it's a fairly large store, downtown core kind of thing. And again, no names mentioned, but let's just say MNN, right? So I started to store manager. One of them wanted me to come into the office because I'd just been late and I've been dealing with a crisis situation. So I had to detail eventually. I haven't told them anything about my situation, but I guess they probably would have been able to guess themselves anyways that it wasn't a good situation. But that's not an excuse. I was showing up late, so I had a conversation with them after they called me in. And, just what's going on, man. They just want to know what's happening, what's all this stuff going on. Because even though it's been a while now, I've been working at this store, I still show up late. And I feel bad about that, honestly. I'm my own worst critic. And I detailed to them some things that I'm going through, including like disorders and general public harassment and all that crap that you gotta deal with, and just trying to separate from going no contact with a ridiculous just neighborhood and people in general. And then, doing honestly pretty well in terms of working on, going to renovations and grabbing tools from Home Depot and like Rona, and doing all sorts of administrative work, whether it's like getting paperwork done for the government, working out housing. We're no longer at a shelter anymore, right? And just trying to claw back to where we used to be more than 5 years ago, before we fell into this spiral due to the wrong kinds of people. We were able to volunteer, do our own project, side business, lots of friends, and just, enjoy my time. And, take care of family. And family's already grown up. I don't have to do that anymore. So I can really focus on myself, which is the reverse of most people actually, right? So my life's kind of reversed, right? I live as a caregiver and parent and grandfather figure from a very young age, and then now I get to experience like things for myself. I get to have fun myself, experience like the freedom of a kid one day. So long story short, I detailed the situation to him a little bit better, and then just kind of took accountability and said, it's just my fault, I'm sorry. And then I said, I want to pivot too, because now I have a chance and opportunity to talk to you about this. And so I was sitting with a manager, MNN, that's not their actual names, right? It's just abbreviating privacy, confidentiality. And our conversation I wanted to know more about was like, I haven't been able to spend the time that I wanted to, honestly speaking, learning more about our store and our situation here. Going in at the very beginning, I've already had a significant impact on the workplace culture. within my department deliberately and intentionally. But then that culture and also kind of spread indirectly and unintentionally across the rest of the store as well, because I kind of like, now I'm very frequently in this neighborhood, so like you could say I'm a local, right? So it's just like people kind of know, and you kind of have an impact on the local neighborhood. And since I work basically where I live, right, so I had an impact on the store culture as well. And so what I would say is I want to understand some of the challenges. So one of the main challenges we had was that, well, among several, they all kind of are interconnected. Damn, this one might be a long episode. I might not be able to get a lot done in terms of the other material, which is fine, because I guess if we need to, we'll make 3 episodes instead of 2. But the major thing was we don't have a lot of hours. For example, we just don't get a lot of hours to work. And this is because it's a large corporation, right? Again, no names mentioned. I won't say what it is. It could be like Sobeys, could be like Metro, could be Walmart, could be Loblaws, could be Shoppers Drug Mart, could be Costco. I'm not gonna say what, who, what, where, when, why. But it's been difficult for the past couple of years for people to get a lot of hours as inside the store, especially if they're part-time working. To get even full-timers, some of them just get hourly cuts, and because of that, it creates a lot of problems, a lot of issues, right? Because people, well, that's not the only issue, right? There's a lot of different issues that result in that, and there's a lot of issues that are separate from that, because there are obviously, for example, a lot of competitors in our area. It's also a very high traffic and difficult to reach destination. And there's also tariffs, right, going on. That's a more recent thing. It's also, some colleagues are just lazy. Some colleagues just don't want to do shit. Other colleagues are just like hammering away, and they're barking and harassing people, right? And then there's the public, the customers. Sometimes we have great customers. Sometimes we have some really shitty customers. Long story short, there's so many different problems, and then of course there's great colleagues as well. And then, but then there's also like, what's another example? Like supply chain disruption, right? Our vendors and supply chain, other companies that supply us with the product are having increased prices due to, there's another factor, the pandemic and stuff like that. So there's just so many factors that come into play here, and then shifting demographics, the consumer market's changing, right? Accommodating to the harsher socioeconomic times, meaning that people are just going to eventually buy less. They're going to buy less, they're going to buy more for cheaper in bulk, and so on and so forth. So the strategy changes. Long story short, for all these reasons, we just haven't been getting a lot of hours. And for me, myself personally, I don't have to worry too much about that, thankfully, because I've done my work, and I know how to get by. But there are a lot of my colleagues who are not so fortunate, or they haven't been as on the ball with things, right? And that's to be understandable. Most people don't have a life as tumultuously, almost sounds tragic, like, let's not get into, like, it's not a sob story kind of thing. Like, this is something that I receive a lot of feedback from. A lot of people just actually say what I've been through is just really fucking sad, apparently. And I'm like, that doesn't do me any good to be sad about myself. So if you can't tell, a lot of my episodes in the past have been focused on not embracing victim mentality, not embracing victim blaming either, but like just not being a pathetic, weak sap who, ends up like, oh, woe is me, that's not helpful. That's not any way to live your life. It's not a very practical way to get out of any situation. In fact, it just kind of makes things worse. And so I really am I won't say I'm fully against it, but especially recently, it's been so extreme that I was quite fully against that, how extreme things have become. And so, long story short, I'm candidly aware that the situation isn't good for me, but I can't allow myself to be a pussy. Sorry, I'm just gonna put it the way. It's just, you know, if you grow up in the hood, in the ghetto, you just know that's no way to go about life. That's not a good outlook. It doesn't really get you anywhere, right? And so, you know, faced with all these odds, right, I guess one thing I always wanted to do was always be prepared, and I recognized that a lot of people, they kind of got caught with their pants down, right? And even though I foresaw the international global conflict that was brewing since like 2016, I was able to predict it coming in 2019. Eventually, like 3 years later, I knew it, right? Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. Boom. I also predicted, you know, another Ukraine war shit going down, another one, the Iran and Israel and kind of thing. It's just like, it's not, if you just pay attention to the news and pay attention to the world, it's not hard. But of course, the youth really were more focused on like Twitch and social media and looks maxing kind of shit, right? That's what they're focused on at the time. Only the adults really paid attention to, and the adults were becoming incredibly, you know, obnoxious, right? Because they were fed up with how immature the kids were. And, you know, so you got out there like screaming, and they became like really, I guess the youth at the time would call them narcissistic, and they weren't exactly wrong, because they were so fed up that they just didn't trust the youth, and they decided to be jackasses. Well, now the youth are jackasses, now that they've grown up. Long story short, you know, I was able to foresee a lot of the circumstances. The pandemic didn't hit me as hard either, because I was prepared for that. I specifically took a career in like medicine and stuff like that, so that I would be prepared for stuff like that, right? But a lot of people got caught with their pants down. They weren't prepared. You know, I take the whole better safe than sorry approach, but a lot of people kind of like take it easy, and I'm down with that too, until they start to throw a fit afterwards, right? They start to throw a fit afterwards, like, how can you get so pissy and angry and start dumping all your shit on other people and just misbehaving and throwing temper tantrums and shit like that, and like harassing other people when you yourself don't have things together, when you had the opportunity to work ahead and you didn't, you know? At that point, I lose practically all sympathy, right? Because it's like, what the fuck, man? So at that point, I realized that a lot of my colleagues who have kept it together, and these are colleagues who I really like to be friends with. These are friends who these are people I surround myself with. Acquaintances, friends, mutuals, colleagues family, some blood, who keep themselves together during difficult times, or in as much as possible, trying to manage themselves. And even if they do get caught with their pants down and they're a little surprised, they still manage to maintain their integrity and their character. And so there's quite a few of these kinds of really good people, solid, good folk within my own department. Same thing with the store, a lot of good folk in my store as well. So I try my best basically to see what I can do to get more hours for my colleagues. And, I'm not particularly good at that. I'm not saying that I'm capable. I know, like I said, I've said before, I'm no hero, no saint. I lack the power, but to make that kind of substantial change, but I do whatever I can. And so when I'm in the store, I do try to work quite rigorously to manage more sales, put more product on the shelves, try to promptly answer customer questions. People come along, try to be just cordial, friendly, warm, not to, not ramble too much, but at least just be warm enough and just give them the answer that they need. And also to even like teach them how our system works in terms of inventory. Here's a sticker label, by the way. It just means that it's sold out, so you don't have to come and ask me in the future. You can just kind of, now you can sort of make decisions on your own. And I'm very transparent like that with my customer base, with people in general, with my colleagues in general. And that's what I try to do. Be very straightforward, be very practical, because I want to have like a win-win-win situation here, right, in as much as possible. And that's not to say that sometimes I fail, sometimes I make mistakes, like I said, I just fuck up sometimes, right? But that's what I try to do, because I'm, at the end of the day, like I said, some of these colleagues, I consider them to be like, not close friends, but like just distant friends, right? And I know some of them are going through a rough time. Some of them are paying like really expensive $3,000 rent between them and their girlfriend, between them and their boyfriend. And it's tough to make a living, especially in this city. It's very, very difficult to make a living in this city. Quality, cost of living is so expensive. Basic things like toiletries and healthcare and household items and groceries and food. It's all gas. It's all really expensive. And some of them got surprised because some of them are international. They came here just to travel, but they were looking for a place that maybe could settle down, and they got kind of surprised. So it wasn't really the best surprise for some of them. And then some of them have been here and born here for a really long time, but that doesn't change the fact that it's difficult for people who are native and born here as well. So whether they're born here and grew up here, or they immigrated here from a very early age and then grew up here, or they're just completely fresh off the boat, all three categories, and they're just new here for the first couple of years or even past couple of months. It doesn't really matter. It's just tough for everyone. So whatever I can do when I'm at the store, when I'm working, is to get more hours as much as possible by generating more sales. And it's not always possible, right? Because I don't get to decide what the consumer base purchases, and that's okay, right? I'm never going to criticize, oh, you didn't buy more like frozen food or milk or grocery. And it's like, that's not the way it works, right? Because person to person, people buying stuff, they're just people too. I just treat them like people. And so at the end of the day, it's like all I can do is allow people to do the best that they can do by making their decisions efficient, fast, and informative. That's about it. Whether it's for my colleagues or customers or just people in general. And that's my goal. And I brought this conversation up to my boss, coming full circle, right? Where is this all leading? Is that, after discussing the whole my situation and why I'm late and so frequently or erratic, I would say sometimes I'm really early, sometimes I show up an hour and a half early, sometimes I'm like an hour late, so that's not good. It's just inconsistency because of I'm recovering from all the sabotage and ruin from that crazy neighborhood, and it's bad. But overall, the second topic that I want to discuss, coming full circle here, right, how this is all relevant, is I basically detailed my goals here with the ASM, assistant manager, and the manager, because N&M, we talk a lot in terms of just brief passing by, hey, how's it going? Just kind of cheery smile, oh, not bad, not bad, not bad. Minor tasks here or there. It's just points out, oh, by the way, can you face that up here a little bit better? Because it's looking kind of empty. But we rarely ever have a solid conversation. And this is the first time I saw the opportunity. I said, I'm going to jump on this because I really want to get to this. I wanted to educate myself a little bit with the store as well. I want to communicate my goals with my boss, right? And my colleagues, because actually the ASM and I, we've had deeper conversations before, just getting to know each other. And he's a really chummy guy. We get along well. And so I was talking to N&M, and I detailed more of my goals and what my mindset is really like when I get into the store, And I had questions. I want those questions answered because I said, can you explain to me, some of the factors, why it is that's so difficult for us to get hours? How are the hours distributed? How much connection is there between the hours and sales, between wages and sales, between, the style of the business as a corporation, 7 levels of management, 10 levels of management, who gets to make the decision about how to distribute the hours? I know certain departments, for example, have higher margins, others have low margins, others have higher sales volume, and do they compensate for each other, and so on and so forth. And then one of the key critical things, I'm going to wrap up this episode really soon because it's going on half an hour now, and I guess this entire episode has been more storytelling and experiences and just talking about people in general. Again, no names mentioned, nothing confidential, right? Nothing classified. The last thing that I wanted to speak about was, and that really nailed it solidly, and as I was curious about what was the biggest challenge in terms of breaking even in our store. And again, no location disclosed, no addresses or anything. All I can say is that it's a big store. And the first thing I knew when I first came to this store, and I chose this store, and I have no regrets, but I know the amount of work is going to be slightly disproportional because it's a huge ass facility. It's a lovely store. I love going there, and it takes a lot of work to maintain because of that, because the costs are so high and extravagant. And so I left that conversation, came back afterwards, in about 5 minutes. I said, oh, there was one more thing I wanted to ask. And then I said, you know, we got 5 minutes. And he said, yeah, sure. It's not. And I said, you know, what would you say is like the biggest thing here that, and oh my gosh, I shit you not. The first things that came to mind is like, you know, the first thing that I have to guess personally is probably the operating cost, right? And it turns out that, you know, it's not wrong, because he brought it up. He's like, yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. Because it takes, and I can't pull a figure here because, like I said, I don't want to give any real ideas. Like, I don't want to give any concrete values, right? I just want to keep it classified. So let's just put it this way. You could say between the property tax, hydro, electricity, lighting, gas, maintenance, basically the operational capacity, like the cost, operating expenses of our store is massive. It's huge. You might as well think it's like 750K. You know what I mean? It's so expensive to maintain this store. That's just a figure I pulled up, right? I want to give you an idea of how expensive it is, right? Because 750K, yeah, that's not the actual figure, right? That I didn't give any real figures. I'm just giving you an example of how much it costs. 750K is basically, you know, $750,000. That's like a, you know, $1 million costing store to run. And that's just an example, right? It's not actually $1 million, but you get my general idea. I'm saying it's really fucking expensive to maintain this store. And so you imagine the amount of sales and revenue that you need to generate in order to compensate for that. Otherwise, the store ends up becoming overall a bit of a loss and has to be carried by other stores around the city, which I had predicted at the beginning. So it's not too hard to see that it's a great store, lovely facility, bright colors, you know, glass windows, very poor insulation, loses all the heat. But right, that's exactly why it's so expensive, right? And so I had my suspicions confirmed, and it was a good conversation. And you know, there was even some like, I just wanted to ask him himself, like, why'd you even come here? You know, why what made you decide you want to manage a store? He's like, I didn't really want to. I just got transferred here. So anyways, it was a fun conversation. Like I said, there's nothing here private or personally identifiable, but it was an interesting conversation to have. And I learned a lot, right? Or I didn't really learn that much, but I was able to confirm and verify my educated guesses, you could say, about why it's so difficult to do what we do at the store. And so that's about it. I think 33 minutes. God damn. Yeah. You know, coming full circle, right? You know, full circle. I'm gonna pull up the graphic because it's relevant. So, like I said, right? How is that relevant here? The entire story is a topic in and of itself. I'm probably gonna put this on a Sunday actually instead of Friday. Now that I realize what we discussed was so relevant for a variety of different reasons. It's more like storytelling. But long story short, if you take a look, like I said, this is like the search webpage of logging into the dashboard, and the keywords that I told you were yearly profit fiscal store comparison. I was basically trying to figure out, in other words, how much we make on a monthly basis, annual basis, compare that to other stores within our same franchise. For example, if it's a Costco warehouse, then other Costco warehouses, how do we all perform in relationship to each other? I just want to know, is our store the most expensive? It is. Compared to other stores, is it the most, more or less, are we experiencing more losses in the store? Are we experiencing greater revenue in sales in the stores? I want to understand that better, because this is relevant to the way that I will work at my store and what kind of strategies I will employ when I'm working. with my colleagues and with the public and just with our managers and just in the area in general. Yeah, and also just to see, in terms of like, there's a little bit of stoicism here, right? But basically, what can I do within my locus of control, from I guess, like, Aurelius and the Epicurean standpoint, what can I do within my control to better the quality of life and workplace, habits and general culture, and profitability, right, of my colleagues and my store, so that we can, hopefully just have a better time and make more. Myself, I don't really actually need more. It kind of works against me, actually. I don't want to work too much, but yeah, that's something that I want to know, and I definitely got the answers that I needed, which we're going to cover in the next 2 episodes. Okay. That's a long story. Again, nothing. I'm going to be reiterating this very often for the next 2 episodes, that this is private, classified, confidential stuff that I won't be talking about, but rather talking about the topics that are surrounding said content. So I won't be showing or talking about anything specific. In this episode, we could talk a little bit more because stuff here is very like vague and broad and generalized, and you could all see this on like public news, so there's nothing here that's classified. But going forward, I'm going to be talking about things around the topic as opposed to the actual specific topics themselves. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that a little bit. I don't know what's it like when you go to work. What is it good? Is it not? Is it like I don't know. Do you like what you do when you go to work? I don't even know. Maybe you just want to tell what do you do for a living? If you're even maybe you're still students, who knows? Or maybe you're retired, right? Maybe you're retired. So that being said, I said most of my friends have been retirees, so I just want to make it clear. If you're old and you're like 60, 70, you're all welcome here. It doesn't really matter if you're grandkids. I have friends a lot of my friends they do have grandkids they have their adult children. They have adult children who have like kids too, so they have grandkids. So with that being said, that's it. I'm tuning in, signing out, and I hope this was like an interesting story here, relatable in some sense, a feel-good kind of story, facing certain challenges, and there's a little bit of stuff here that I could talk mildly about, but going forward we won't. So I'll see you guys next one. This is I'm signing out. Peace. Okay. I drink some water.